Welcome to Game Club, the podcast that's like a book club but for video games. I'm Dan, the biggest, baddest podcaster on Block G.
I'm Catherine, the hapless minimum security prisoner.
And I'm Charles, unnecessarily cruel prison guard.
Welcome to episode 12. This week we played Prison Achitect. So Prison Achitect, as Catherine mentioned at the top of the show, it's essentially a city builder, but you're building a prison. And you have to manage the prison from its staff, guards, janitors, where the walls are, how many cells you've got, how big those cells are, and it's all in this sort of cartoony graphics. It was released in 2015, developed by Introversion Software and Double 11. Won a bunch of awards, like the BAFTA Games Award for Persistent Game. I don't know what that really means. It's on PlayStation
They tried
4.
really hard.
They just persisted. Or maybe it's for the fans that persisted through the alpha stages.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
It's on PS4, Xbox One, PC, Xbox 360, and I believe, is it on iPad yet? I'm not sure if this
iPad it is.
Did you play it?
I played it on iPad. I've also played it on Steam because I was one of the original alpha players.
Me too. Oh, we're so cool.
We're so cool. This is how cool we are.
Everyone see how cool we are. Okay.
So before we inflate your egos a little too far for being trendsetters.
Way too late for that, Dan.
Did you mostly...
I am gaming.
Yeah.
All right, please go on.
Did you mostly play the campaign or did you mostly play sandbox? Or where did your hours lie in this one?
Both. Significant both.
So originally, the campaign, when I first started playing it, when it was back in alpha, the campaign didn't exist, I don't believe, in any form.
No,
so you just sandboxed the shit out of it. And I invested hundreds of hours into it and had a great time. This time around, I actually just stuck to the campaign and played it right through. And really enjoyed it. And so that was what I did. That was my thing.
Yeah, I didn't, after sinking sort of so many hours into FTL, I didn't actually get too deep into Prison Achitect, only around the sort of 20-hour mark. If you believe it.
Noob. It's like your first prison.
But I really enjoyed the campaign. We'll talk about that for a bit. Charles, you can probably talk, you and Catherine can talk more about it as you probably got a lot further than me. But you start off, and it's not really a tutorial. While it sort of encourages you to build, it's mostly just, okay, first mission, build an electric chair.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've already got a working prison, and it's just about sort of following instructions to sort of build. But you get this weird story based on Polaroids of the criminals that come into your system. What do you guys think of the story elements of the campaign?
I thought the story was really clever because they were all linked. All of the different stories were linked in one way or another, whether it was... So the first person that's getting executed is the guy who shot the wife and the lover. And then it was... I can't remember the exact connection, but the lover was somehow connected to a different crime. I don't know. There were links.
I think they found drugs at the scene of the crime that led to
the family
or whatever.
That's right. He was the son from the crime boss that they found the drugs and it linked. So that was super clever and subtle. It didn't really focus on it, but just a nice little story link. But what I enjoyed the most about the story and the campaign was that it was super dark. It didn't pull any punches and it was super, super moody. Whereas the gameplay is, of course, kind of light and fun, and they're stabbing each other, and it's hilarious because they're these tiny little people. But the story behind it was really dark.
And the campaign was pretty, it kind of, as the game does in general, really highlighted the moral ambiguity of how people run prisons, which is, do you focus on reform or do you focus on punishment? Which is probably a question which we'll get into later as well, because I'd be fascinated to see how you guys played the game. But the campaign definitely started to introduce some of those ideas, like, okay, you have to put your prisoners through a certain amount of like after school classes and blah, blah, blah. But also here you've researched this extra, punishment level. And which one is more effective at controlling them and reforming them and getting them out of the prison, or just locking them down and keeping to earn money off them.
Earning as much money as possible, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think definitely it's a game that it's really fun to play, and also it makes you step back and think about the prison industrial complex, and that's a pretty big ask for a little simulation game.
Yeah, it achieves a lot for what it is.
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah, especially one that has, as Charles mentioned, these sort of cute little graphics. And even when they're stabbing each other in the showers, there's sort of cartoonish blood spurting everywhere. And you're like, oh, this is hilarious. This is a little cartoon. And then it's you see the Polaroid of what happened, these shirtless tattooed mobsters, and why they're doing this because of some sort of family gang thing. And then you're like, yeah, this is not a great system. I played a bit of the sandbox. The sandbox just dumps you right in, though. It's just, here's a blank space, build a prison.
Yeah.
And as you said, there are those sort of different ways you can do it. A lot like other city building games where do you just build slums? And that's, and you maximize population and money that way, but everyone's really unhappy. So you have to build more jails. Or do you try and build this utopia, but you can't fit that many people in and it's not as cost effective? I'd be interested to see what routes you guys went.
So I had a mission 5 of the campaign. It's pretty much that blank slate. And so I gave myself a new challenge, which was I wanted to build an only indoor prison where they never got to see the light of day. Jesus. And I didn't, I went to a bad place. And then I also didn't want to give them individual cells. I wanted to maximize
the dormitories.
Cost. And no, holding cells. So I only put them in holding cells that I had rows and rows of bunks in, with like tiny like group toilets and showers at the back. And I'd fit 50 prisoners to a minimal space room. And wanted to give it.
We played very different games.
I wanted to give myself the challenge of like how horrid I could make this prison while keeping them under control. And so I had my guards with tasers and like body armor and packed people in like sardines, and it was amazing.
How did it go?
It went really well. But because I've also played the reform prisons, and you build nice luxury cells and you reward people for good behavior and all that kind of crap. And look, that works. And that works really well too. So both systems work, but you have to play them in a different way. And obviously you're making different moral choices when you do that. So I thought that was really clever. And I purposely did that at the end there, not because I'm a sadistic human, kinda, but also to see if it would work, and it did. Yeah, it was great, and I enjoyed it.
And I think that's the thing. There's no right way or wrong way to play it. There are obviously, you need a certain amount of guards. Like there are certain minimum requirements, but for everything else, it's just events happen. So I had the events mode turned on, which is definitely a new thing that wasn't around in the alpha. And I felt like that kept the game kind of humming along a bit more for me. Like I'd be like, okay, everything's going well. I've got the right number of canteens, all my cells are locked down,
and then Godzilla
do regular
attacks.
Searches. Like regular searches to stop escapes happening, but then there's a virus that goes around. Or then I have to take all the radios out of every cell. Or
yeah, nice. I didn't have that turned on. Maybe I should have. Interesting.
Yeah. It really added a lot to it, because I think it added that tiny bit of story that was missing. Like obviously only the smallest bit, but it was just a call coming in from the mayor or a call coming in from, the governor or whatever, saying, oh, this is happening, you need to do this, or it just kept it chugging along that things would be fine, and then everything would go to shit. And also slowly upping the types of prisoners I took. I really enjoyed that. Like I started with my minimum security prisoners, and then I just kind of slowly started increasing my intake of more dangerous ones to make the prison kind of harder to run.
Do you get more money for higher security prisoners?
Yeah, but cool. Their terms are usually longer, I think, as well. So
you don't get the turnover, because you get money when you get new prisoners as well. There you go. See,
you also get more per day, though. So like, there's not as much turnover, but you do like having a maximum security person. Also, to be blunt, they're more likely to die than the minimum security ones. So like, I think money wise, I think money wise, it definitely works out better to have the maximum security people in there. They're just way harder to deal with, and you need more guards. So
what I found really cool, and I ended up looking up some guides because I was struggling for money a fair bit in some respects with that whole turnover thing. Like you've got, I've got to take people in, but they're in my prison for so long, just years and years, that I can't afford to take more in without building more, and it's sort of this endless grind.
You can control the intake, right?
Yeah, but if I didn't take more on, then I wouldn't be getting more money.
Yeah, gotcha. Yep.
And at least until I was able to build a workshop, and then I just put them all to work and just make birdhouses or license plates or whatever it is they do. And it's like, I can make money from my prisoners. I'm sure this is a commentary somewhere, but it's really useful.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a commentary because unpaid the unpaid prison labor in America is this huge thing where it's like, so they basically work for like 3 cents an hour or something,
Yep.
and they undercut labor costs in the states that kind of have prisons that produce items because obviously they pay them far, far less than you have to pay real workers. So they're kind of the illegal immigrant equivalent, except that they're prisoners and they can't leave.
Totally legitimate. But you're giving them skills, Dan. You're giving them skills. It's cool. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Oh,
Mm.
loose.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a worry in terms of you kind of look at the logic and you're like, this feels. I know that this is a real thing, but I'm going to put them to work anyway.
Yeah, because you kind of have to, because otherwise your prison's going to go under. So it was those great pressures that really made you make some interesting moral ambiguity choices, and I appreciated that.
I also like that there were those options where you could get a loan or you can get a grant or something. It's like, oh, you get this grant, but you have to build a doctor's area with X amount of doctors, or you get this grant, but you have to build a reform area. And so it's like, oh, okay, there are ways you can get a bit of money and do that, but it also, the money is shaping your prison because the money's meant to go towards those things.
Yep.
And you can get, like any good city simulator, city building simulator, you can get pretty nitty gritty with your laws, I guess you would call them, or
your policies and
your policies. So you can research new ones and whatnot, but you can go, okay, free time is between here and here. Eating is this time, and everyone must be in there sleeping at this time, or they must be working at this time, or locked in their cells at this time. And if you want, you can really micromanage that down and try and find efficiencies.
The level of control that you have over your prison is immense. Considering it seems like such a simple game from first view. You can really go deep. I looked at some of the items you can get into, and I don't know how you access them, but there's actually logic engines you can put in with sensor pads and all that kind of stuff. So
you access those through electric doors. Like the remote controlled doors are how you get to all those logic pad things. Because I had to look at it and was like,
I need that.
If I was deep in, sure, that's a little bit too far for me. Like it was like basically programming little pre-done things. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to go that far into this game.
But it's so cool that you can. There's just so much that you can control, and so many different options for your prison that every prison will look different, and you can run them in so many different ways. And that was really, really interesting and impressive.
Also, the depth to the game, like I'm sure, I know a lot of them would be randomly generated, but like if you click on the rap sheet, they all have different crimes, they react different ways. There were certain prisoners that were, once I got a surveillance system going, I could see like who were the fearless ones. So if there was a fight, they'd wait in there and they wouldn't listen to the guards. And like I had kind of a semi-boss level prisoner that was always causing trouble, and I kind of eventually put in like 24/7 solitary.
Yeah, nice.
So every single prisoner had a rap sheet, and you could search individually or punish or like really, really micromanage. And there was just a depth to that game. It wasn't like, oh, they're all just little blobs,
Yep. Yeah,
which
each
is
one was
great.
different. That's really cool. I also want to talk about the building mechanics. So the prison management is one side, but you've got to build your prison first. Now, a lot of these games, it's very satisfying. Just pulling out that first concrete foundation, you're just like, oh. But then at the same time, you're like, did I make that quite big enough to make sure the items in my prison are symmetrical? Did that kill you inside, Catherine? Yeah. As I was doing it, and sometimes there were two gaps.
Except they have a planning
instead of
ability
one.
now. So
Correct.
They never used to have the ability to plan, but now they do, and it solved a lot of my feelings.
Yeah, and there's pre-built things
Measure
you can do
twice,
to make
cut
it
once
easy.
sort of thing.
Yeah, correct. You can plan out an entire prison with fake drawings and then fill it in. It's really cool. And there's also quick build and cloning tools. So the building, it can be either as detailed as you want or as quick as you want. And I thought that was really clever as well. They've really increased the options you have for building your prison.
I definitely think they needed that. From memory, when I first played the game, they had similar kind of tools. I think they might have had a cloning one, but they didn't have the pre-built stuff.
Yep.
And for someone who, if you've just dropped into the game in Sandbox and go, okay, now what? How, it kind of tells you it needs to be big enough to house a toilet, a table, a toilet, a bed, and at a door or whatever. But having the pre-built ones and going like, oh, okay, that's kind of the average, or that's the small version, and then building from there, I think, for myself, that really helps compared to just having a blank slate and being paralyzed for choice of, oh, crap, how big should I make this thing?
Yep. Yeah, I thought, look, I played the alpha when it came out, which is obviously a number of years ago. And then the version I played was the iPad version. So I suspect it was a little bit different to the PC one. In fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't. But it was really interesting to see the things that had changed with the game and improved, and like the amount of options, the amount of rooms, the policies, and just how much they'd added over what must have been 3 or 4 years of development from when the alpha came out.
Yep.
And all for people that honestly had paid for the game once already. So, I mean, I think it's kind of an example of when alphas go right in terms of you had a game and it was really rough and you built a little prison and it was really basic, and then suddenly it's this fully fledged game that's obviously had huge feedback from the community about what they wanted to see and what they wanted to be able to do in their own prisons. Yeah, I mean, and I just remembered actually, it all came about from that really famous trailer for Prison Achitect where they just said, we have all these bugs and we need help. This is what's happening. You know, our prisoners are in the canteen fighting. Why are they all naked? We're not sure.
Awesome.
And it was one of the very first alpha games, and I think it stood up really well. And, you know, cut to how many years later, it's a really, really sophisticated resource management game that's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. That's the important one. Just super fun.
Especially with the popularity of Orange is the New Black, I think they released a women's prison version as well.
Oh, really?
The prisoners can have babies, and
I played the women's prison version. It actually annoyed me a bit, obviously, that I couldn't have that option in the default ones, so in the campaign. But as soon as I could sit in the sandbox one, I started up a female prison. It was basically the same. The main difference was you had certain prisoners coming in that had to go in special rooms called family rooms, and had to be fed in rooms called nurseries that were kind of like canteens. They took up a little bit more room because it was like the size of a normal dormitory, but would just house one prisoner. And it meant that I had prisoners that were sitting in the holding cells or just in the reception actually for days and days because they didn't have a suitable spare room.
Yep.
And what that meant was that I didn't have a spare room which had a cot in it.
So just added a level of complexity, really.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was pretty much exactly the same, except when the prisoners got naked, there were little boobs. Like, you know, other than the babies. Yeah. Charles is restarting his game right now.
Yeah, this changes everything. Now, do we want to move on to things that we didn't like so much?
Sure.
Yeah.
Things that could be improved.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was the whole tutorial/campaign. In that it really is a game that kind of, it's like if you walked into a board game that had been playing for 10 hours already and you were desperately trying to catch up. Like, by the time I got to the sandbox section, I felt like, okay, yep, I vaguely remember how to run a prison and what to do, and like, here's the basics, like change the regime time and, you know, change this policy for the food thing or whatever. And I started a new prison and there were just so many options and I hadn't been taught about any of them, and I was looking at the Wikipedia page every second. And there are some people that love that style of gaming, but I definitely do want to be handheld a little bit more. I wanted, you know, it's like using the programming example of like those remote activated doors where you could, you know, do certain tricks with them. The game would never, ever teach you that. That would be a thing that you would have to go up and look on YouTube. It would never, it would never and didn't have little sections about how to build different aspects of your prison or how to, you know, use the surveillance tab or any of that. It just pushed you straight in, and I felt like I drowned a little bit as a result.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm on a similar board just when it comes to the campaign. I expect a campaign to have a ramp up in difficulty and teach you the mechanics of the game one at a time or a handful at a time, hopefully without having a, hey, you know, you have to do this and have to do this to progress, like a lot of those mobile games have. But introducing mechanics slowly, a la, just Super Mario. Hey, you need to, first we introduce jumping, and then we introduce this, and then we sort of have a combination of the two. I think the campaign really could have benefited from that. That whole, hey, you're in new prison, we need to get started. Maybe instead of just, okay, here's the mission where you make an electric chair, and then next mission there's a canteen fire, or there's someone. You've already got everything set up, so it was a bit weird to have to manage sort of rooms that I hadn't ever seen before.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And I think maybe this stems from the fact that it was in alpha for so long, and they had the sandbox for that, right? Like you just
they had a slow
sandbox,
ramp up.
Whereas people who were already invested, already playing, they're the people that got onto the campaign when it was finally released. So maybe if it had that ramp up, it would have been too slow for them. However, I feel it leaves sort of newcomers in the cold a little bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice for games that they face a lot in the board game world as well with the tutorial, is what kind of game are you making this game for? And if you make the tutorial too easy, too simple, and too drawn out, people will lose interest. A lot of gamers will lose interest. So it's kind of finding that sweet spot between the two types of gamers, because people will play a game for sometimes an hour, and then that's all they'll give it if the tutorial's too long and too boring, and they're done. So I've played a lot of Minecraft in my time, and that was kind of one of my favorites. So I'm very used to that idea of a game giving you absolutely nothing and I love survival games and having to go
I
away
hated
and
Minecraft
research.
for that reason. So
so there you go. So you and I are very different types of gamers, and I think they've found the sweet spot between the two. Where they're going to piss off both of us, but they're at least going to keep both of us playing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think definitely not making the campaign compulsory, but just like this is the level where you learn how to use canteens and the library or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
I reckon maybe out of all of the rooms that were suggested, rooms that were actively kind of explained were maybe like a quarter, if that. And then even so, I got to the prison logistics section and suddenly I could control where my canteen went and my food, and like the game at no stage explained that to me.
Actually, I did have a task from a grant that said I had to give different types of meals to my prisoners, and I'm just like, I have no idea how to do that. I'm just going to ignore that. So
that's in the policy section.
There you go.
And again, like it's an incredibly sophisticated game, and I think a lot of that stuff really is a result of most people that play it they were there when dormitories were introduced, so they played around with it a bit. And they were there when female prisoners were introduced like a year ago, so they figured that stuff out. Like it has been a slow build for them, and then for someone that comes in the middle, you're just like, what? Like, what is this? What am I doing? Why are they dying?
We've talked about that offline, sort of the problem with early access games is that the people who are super invested and super on board in that alpha stage usually do get drip fed that content, and so it gets released to them, and there's something interesting. Whereas someone who comes in late can either miss out in terms of learning these different mechanics, or the other way around. People who were in the alpha can get burnt out on the game and not see its final version. Either way, I mean, this game is, as the BAFTA game said, persistent. I don't know what that means, but maybe it means people stuck around. The sandbox has a lot to offer, but you like you said, you have to be willing to maybe have a Wikipedia open in the other window.
Absolutely.
And be ready to look things up, which I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of. I like a game to be intuitive and teach you, but games like Minecraft and whatnot, eventually, if you can't figure it out by yourself, you're probably going to hit that wiki.
Yeah. I think, the other thing for me that was a little bit relevant was that it was very buggy. And, the UI was pretty clunky in a lot of ways. And I have this weird, like, I pre-built a canteen, and then that pre-built, like, little ghost thing of like where everything's going to go is just stayed there, even though it's now a fully functional canteen and has been for half the game, and there's no way for me to fix that. So I'm not sure if that's more specific to iPad or if it's just like, because I went online to look up solutions, and it was all like, well, edit the game save file on your PC, great. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't quite work for me.
And then you're like, but I'm an iPad gamer, and then they just spit at you for the next 20 comments. You're a disgrace.
But I mean, that said, it was a perfect game for iPad. Like, it was so like you just touching and drawing and putting foundations down was really well suited to it. It just felt like the port needed like one more bug pass, basically. Yeah.
Did you guys get into the mods? Obviously, you're playing on iPad, I assume you don't have access to mods, but it's quite big in the Steam Workshop.
That's interesting.
I didn't even look. I didn't even think to look, but awesome.
They have a lot of customization tools. I think people have gone and made... I'm just trying to look up some of them now. I remember seeing some when I was logging in. People have made, famous prisoners or, DC Marvel superhero prisoners and things like that. So, and added extra kinds of rooms. And, of course, cheats. If Charles is playing, he might want to download some of those cheats.
I do give in to cheats. I'm a sucker for cheats.
You gave in to cheats?
No, not in this game.
Oh my
not in this game.
God.
No, this is last week in FTL when I originally played it on the PC. I got a trainer thing and unlocked all the ships, and I hated myself for it, but flipped
that's
and
embarrassing.
Loved it.
That's embarrassing.
Ah, the shame.
You don't really care.
No,
I think we lost like 100 subscribers just based on Charles admitting that he uses cheats.
Almost definitely.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, well, you've lost me as a fan, Charles.
You were my biggest fan.
So expect to be if city building and resource management is your kind of game. I think this would be a hearty recommend from most of you guys. Is that right?
Yeah,
definitely.
For sure.
If you enjoy
like The Sims,
fun.
yeah.
If you like killing your Sims, locking your Sims in a room with no doors.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were always that Sim player that's like, how can I fuck with my Sims the most, then this is the game for you.
Who wasn't that player? I mean, come on.
Lots of people, Charles.
They're the worst people.
Yeah,
I don't want anything to do with those people.
Did you hear the quote from the lead developer of The Sims when he got told that so many people liked removing doors or removing those pull steps? Do you know what he said?
No, what did he say?
It seems like some people really enjoy exploring the fail state.
Thanks. It's a pretty good burn.
Yeah, if you're killing your Sims, you are failing.
Exploring the fail state. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like my life. So.
Good.
All right. Well, another thing you could spend hours and hours on is listening to an audiobook. And so we're going to have a little pay to win section in this podcast. Oh. If you go to audibletrial.com/gameclub, you could get a free audiobook of your choice, and just by signing up for free, the Game Club podcast sees a little bit of money from Audible. Charles, if you were locked in prison but were somehow able to still listen to audiobooks, which one would you want to listen to?
I'm listening to one at the moment, which I can't remember the name of. Oof. You're welcome. It's a one with thieves, if you will, and it's got Loch Lamore in it. Hit me, Catherine. What am I talking about?
Yeah, The Lies of Loch Lamore.
Boom. There we go. That's what I'm listening to, and it's pretty good. It's no Star Wars because Lamora. Yeah, because Star Wars is better than anything. But The Lies of Loch Lamora is an excellent audiobook to listen to.
That is an excellent series. Yeah.
Cool. So you can head over to audibletrial.com/gameclub, look up Loch Lamora, and find that one and get downloading. And if it's crap, tweet at Charles and just say, you wasted my one free audiobook on this crap. I can't believe it.
Yeah, feel free.
Mine would be one that I've listened to once or twice, but I've read many, many times, which would be Good Omens, because the show is in production as we speak, I believe. So I think it's a good time to get back into the Good Omens world. Yep.
Yeah, man, he must be making a lot of money. Good for him.
He's actually show running the Good Omens show. So
ooh, how exciting!
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think it's a 6-parter. But yep.
Yeah, after American Gods and now Good Omens.
Well, he didn't show run American Gods. He was obviously very involved, but I think Good Omens is him even more involved.
Yeah, loves it. Awesome.
We've recommended on the show before, but I'll recommend American Gods mostly because
now who's repeating books? It's you.
Yeah, but the character starts off in prison and spends a bunch of time in prison in the workshop, so it's thematically tied to this episode. One more thing I want to talk about the pay to win. You can send us a message and we may read it out on the podcast. We got a 5-star review on iTunes by Phaedron in the US version of iTunes. commented saying it's like a book club for games, and he's actually absolutely correct. That was the
He is
subject
so spot
of
on.
his review, their review, I should say, and they said this podcast does everything right. So thanks, Phaedron.
That's kind and possibly incorrect.
They made that comment probably based on the episode with Josh in it, so maybe we should.
Interesting.
It's fine.
No one's surprised.
No one's surprised at all. Not even I'm surprised.
So thank you, Phaedron, for that comment. If you have a comment you want us to read out on the podcast, the best way to do it is to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, because then we're probably going to read it, or you can send us money and I'll probably read it out as part of some kind of advertising sting.
If you get an envelope and put cash in it with a message and drop that in my mailbox, hey, I'll read it out. Why not?
Yeah.
I'm not a journalist. I don't need integrity.
That's it.
Of course, you can also send us messages on Patreon and whatnot. I assume you're smart enough to figure out how all that works. And with that, we will close down the pay-to-win section for this episode.
So, overall thoughts of the game. Is it a must-play as an indie title? Catherine?
I think it is. If you enjoy this kind of resource management-y style game, I would put this in the solidly must-play. As much as I have all my criticisms about the campaign and what have you, I've probably put about 40 hours into it. So I clearly really, really enjoyed this game.
Yep. I would say this is the definition of the perfect alpha to beta to release game, and therefore it deserves to be played as an indie title. Must play.
I'm going to go against the grain and say, I agree with all your sentiments that it is.
You're not smart enough for the game, Dan. I don't know. I'm laughing
It's your
out.
fault. It's your fault, not the game's fault.
I agree with Charles that it is this sort of perfect idea of how a game should go from alpha to beta to release and stick with its community and build new iterations and provide them for free to people who've already paid, like not charging them extra for these extra features. However, I've just gotten a lot of enjoyment out of different city simulators and building simulators. So I don't think this would be the one that I would say you have to buy this one.
Fair call.
Yeah, I just, with the whole tutorial thing and whatnot, if I was going to onboard someone, I think I'd choose something different. And the idea of the prison system just isn't as thematically appealing to me. So if that's your jam, 100% get on board. It is a quality game that works, and you can have a lot of fun and sink many, many hours into it. But if you're like me and you want maybe something a little bit different, there are those other options out there. So you can save your dollar bills.
Reasonable points, Dan. Reasonable points.
Yeah.
Yep.
If not wrong. All right.
Recommendations for other games that people might like to play if they played this?
Yeah, go.
Sure, Catherine, you've got a whole bunch. Let's start it off.
Well, I think my first one is Fallout Shelter, because it's a very similar kind of resource management style game with little people that you control and that you build up. It's a little bit less punishment based, kind of. You still punish them. So it's very similar. And then just for a little bit of fun, The Escapists, because I just saw number 2 has just been released, so it's actually really good timing. But it's a very, very similar art style to Prison Achitect, except it's the other side. You're trying to escape from the prison. So it's a nice little twin. If you've after you've been trying to stop prisoners escaping for all of these hours, you can play a game where you're the one trying to escape.
That looks really cool. I don't think maybe I have seen that before very briefly, but certainly I'm more interested now, especially because I'm interested in looking at making, for my next board game, a prison escape board game.
Cool.
So that might be something I'll have to look into. Yeah, very nice. Great recommendation, Catherine.
Thank you. It's a rare win.
well done. Dan, you got some recommendations for us?
Absolutely. So on more of the city building aspect of this game, I would recommend City Skylines. Really also, if you're a big fan of SimCity and what SimCity was,
it's very solid.
Very solid game to play. Huge iterations coming out all the time. A lot of management you can really drill down in, and it doesn't have much in the way of sort of a campaign, but it does build up like, hey, now you're going to start building neighborhoods, and then you unlock better types of neighborhood or better types of industrial area and things like that. And so you start expanding outwards.
Yeah, and I feel like the name for that game is a misleading title. It should really be named Sim Highway. Because the biggest challenge of that game for me was making sure the highways worked and the cars didn't just jam up all over the place.
And
Just-
like Prison Architect gives you sort of an insight into, wow, the prison system's kind of messed up. City Skylines gives you an insight into, wow, traffic management's really hard.
Yeah.
and
Next
setting
time
up
you're in
those,
traffic, you'll feel much better about it.
those arterial roadways and sort of setting up ways for people to do it, and also giving people off ramps and then going like, why are you taking that? That's a bad way to navigate. Why, you NPC?
Because
That's terrible.
someone's never taken a wrong turn ever.
Exactly.
How dare they? Yeah, very good.
So that's a big fun in one. If you want sort of that big macro scale city builder, the other one I wanted to recommend is Evil Genius, which is more of a base building, almost like a dungeon keeper style game, but you're a stereotypical evil boss, evil person from like a James Bond movie. So you can be sort of the bald guy with the scar, or the weirdly oriental one, or the crazy femme fatale, and you build a base with your minions and on this island or in a hollowed out volcano, and you sort of have to manage all their research and the missions you send your goons on, and good guy heroes breaking in, trying to undo your evil plans, and managing power and other assets and things like that. So that's another fun one if you want to be sort of like that comical but dark side game.
Now, I want to play all of these games. So the game that I'm recommending, RimWorld, I'll briefly touch on. I have recommended this before, but it actually uses, I believe, the same engine as Prison Architect.
It looks very similar.
It looks very similar, so I can only assume it's either made by the same guys or they grabbed the engine off them. And it's essentially Prison Architect, but instead you've crash landed. You're a group of survivors that have crash landed on a planet, and you're building essentially your base on this planet and trying to survive. And the other one I'm going to recommend is an old school title called Theme Hospital. Now, if you've somehow not played Theme Hospital, you are cheating yourself of
I haven't.
a pillar of gaming.
No.
Stop the podcast.
You're out.
I actually just clicked through to Evil Genius, and that was one of my favorite games going up. Like, I have not thought about that game in years, so I'm totally going to boot that up and give it a go.
Why don't we maybe look at that as a future game that we play after we've done a few different ones. But so Theme Hospital, like Prison Architect, but you're making a hospital and you've got sick people coming in and you're managing all the different rooms and trying to heal them and the hilarity that ensues. And that is our game recommendations.
I want to touch on Theme Hospital and just sort of expand on that a bit.
Can't let it go. It's too good.
It was given away for free on Origin, which is EA Games' thing. Or, if you did own the original CD but lent it to a friend and they lost it, you could also maybe just get it there.
That's one way to get it back. Maybe never.
No, I did. I did play Theme Hospital. I'm back on board.
You back on
I
board?
played the shit out of that
goodness.
game. Yeah.
Yes, good.
I actually downloaded, after I got Theme Hospital on Origin, you can get an update, an unofficial update called TH Core 6, and that updates the game so it'll run well on 1080p monitors, and it adds a lot of functions like save states and things like that, and speed up and slow down time. That adds sort of those functionalities we've become used to in these kind of games.
Yep, that didn't exist in 1997 or whatever.
When
we played this
Bullfrog
game.
was making it or whatever. And on RimWorld, there's something out there, I think someone's shared it to me, it might have gone around your kind of forums, Charles, where a group of people, because RimWorld is a single-player game, but they would play a day's worth, save the file, send it to the next person in their friendship group, and they would play a day's worth.
That's really cool.
And then sort of give recounts to each other of what happened. And so you'd boot it up and be like, why is half the survivors dead? And
That's
it became
an interesting
just
way of
about
playing
like,
game.
one of you
cool.
might be evil, killing off your survivors or sending your least favorite survivors out to do all the dangerous stuff.
It's always me.
Yeah. So just that aspect of it kind of intrigues me of checking out RimWorld.
Nifty.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the end of our discussion for Prison Architect. But we have a very important segment that everyone loves coming up next. It is the quiz.
The quiz! All right.
Oh my God. I thought we were going to skip the quiz.
You're getting really tense. After my epic victory last week from the quiz,
I had a million points, I think.
by 1,000,000 points. I destroyed Josh, and it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. It was such a comeback too. It was beautiful.
He's
this
probably
week
still sad about that.
Yeah, almost definitely. This week I am the quiz master, and because of the prison theme of Prison Architect, we're going to have a quiz about prison slang.
Oh, brilliant.
Which will be wonderfully hilarious in our very white middle class worlds that we exist in, and we'll see how we go. Now, Catherine might have a slight advantage in this. We'll soon find out. But here we go. So I'm going to give you 3 options for each one, and you'll get to pick. And you obviously both get to pick, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong, and points will be had. So for our first question, prison slang, a cowboy is one of the following: a smuggler, a dangerous inmate, or a new correctional officer. Catherine.
New correctional officer.
Ooh.
Dan.
I'm going to say a smuggler.
1 point, Catherine. Ooh, using her skills. You're pretty bad at it.
Is this because Catherine did time that I don't know about? Or?
Quite possibly.
We established that I had a dream where I left my house for the rats, and I'm like, it's their house now. So I don't know that.
You wouldn't do great in prison. The slang probably wouldn't help you so much. Yeah.
No, I think it's probably because I've worked on a prison-based TV show, is what Charles is implying there.
Probably what I'm alluding to. If Dan ever listened to the crap that comes out of your mouth, maybe you'd know that.
Yeah,
but he's chosen not to. That's fair. All right. 1 point, Catherine. 0 points, Dan. Backdoor parole is taking a communal shower, dying in prison, or taking a dump. Catherine.
Well, can't you go with Dan first? I always go first.
Dan, over to you. Catherine, bowing under pressure.
Not bowing to pressure.
Backdoor parole.
I can tell you. Oh, I think it's dying in prison.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's dying in prison.
There we go. Point each. Catherine on 2, Dan on 1.
I'm just saying,
Backdoor
ask
parole
Dan
is dying
first
in
next
prison.
time.
You're ridiculous. All right.
Has to be fair.
Roadkill is prison food, cigarette butts, or toilet paper. Catherine.
I'm going to say food.
Yeah.
No, Catherine had to answer first. You're both going.
It's food.
You're both going prison food. Roadkill is actually cigarette butts, i.e. when they're out working on the roads, they pick up cigarette butts and bring them back.
See, that's an American thing, though, because Australians don't do the thing where they force you to go.
Did I say it was Australian prisons, Catherine?
No, I'm just saying.
It's just trying to negate your obvious advantage you have for spending time in Australian prisons.
Clearly. All right, so 0 points for both of you on that one, but Catherine is at 2, Dan is at 1. Peels are your lips, i.e. keep your peels closed. Your jumpsuit, i.e. can't wait to get out of these peels. See what I'm doing here? I'm putting in lingo. Or your court case appeal. Got my peels coming up. Catherine.
I'm going to say jumpsuit.
Dan.
I'm going to say the court case.
Oh, Catherine jumps to 3 to Dan's 1. No. Oh, this is embarrassing, Dan.
Most of this is just logic. I'm like, what would I slang it as?
Yeah.
If I was one of the youths.
If you were terrible at naming things. Yeah, gotcha.
Well,
apparently it's a weird skill. I can pick other people's names.
Prisoners clearly aren't that creative. All right. If someone's got jigs, their job is either working in the prison kitchen, being a drug dealer, or acting as a lookout. Catherine.
Oh. I say acting as lookout. None of them really jump out at me, though.
Got jigs. Working in prison kitchen, drug dealer, or lookout.
Let me say drug dealer.
There you go. Catherine jumps to 4 to Dan's 1. Can you guys hear the crying munch in the background?
Yeah, she's really upset that Catherine's got this.
Catherine's winning, yeah.
She is not happy about this. All right, well, I had a bonus question, which we just do not need to go to.
No, do it.
It's going to
anyway.
be worth 5 points.
No, Charles, don't be a dick.
Bonus Australian slang question. Australian slang, see how I differentiated there. A scrim is either an irritating cellmate, an arrogant prisoner, or an informer. I'm going to let Dan go first this time.
Oh, God. Well, I know a scrim is a non-league version of an esports match, but...
Look at you with your cool slang.
Yeah, that's right. A scrim. I'm just going to say a shitty roommate.
An irritating cellmate. Catherine?
Sure. Can you give me the options again?
Yeah, an irritating cellmate, an arrogant prisoner, or an informer.
Am I saying
A and B be
Informer?
the same thing?
An
I'm going to say Informer. You are both incorrect. It is a big-headed, arrogant prisoner.
Yeah, but
So
that's
most
when we
importantly,
get a
I'm
shitty
still the
roommate.
winner. Woo!
Yeah, most importantly, Catherine is still the victor on 4 points to Dan's 1. Well done, Catherine.
Back to my quiz
Clapping.
mastery.
Clapping his hand. Yeah, well done. Your sweet prison slang skills. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
And that is the quiz for this
I would
week.
just say watch yourself in the shower, Catherine.
Oh, creepy.
Also, the other day in the shower, a daddy long legs fell on me.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, better watch out for more of that.
Dan,
Jesus.
sneaking spiders in the vent system.
It did not go well. It's
Nice.
just, for me, for the spider, no one won.
But they're harmless, daddy long legs. Like, they can just crawl all
Yeah,
over you.
do you
and they're
really want
fine.
them on you in the shower, though? Like, unexpectedly dropping from the ceiling onto
Like
you.
instead,
I guess not.
like instead of water, just spiders comes out.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Okay. Good quizzing though. Good, congrats, Catherine.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah,
Catherine.
you're
Well
welcome.
done.
You're welcome. It's pretty great.
So next time on Game Club, we actually ran a poll. The 3 options for the poll were XCOM Enemy Within, Bastion, and Stardew Valley. And by a resounding success, thanks to the votes on our Facebook group, Bastion is going to be the game we're playing next on our Game Club.
Woohoo. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, have you guys played Bastion before?
Sure
I have, but a number of years ago, yeah.
Many years ago.
It is
that
does have
taken?
an iPad version as well. If people want to play along with us, who take
maybe I'll
the
play that
Catherine
one.
Road,
Yep.
of course. If you played it before, it did come out a while ago. The PC version is also quite excellent. And make sure you're wearing headphones, or make sure you have your sound turned on. As it's a
Yeah, I
very
listen to that
lovely
soundtrack
sounding
all
game.
the time, actually. So
All about the music.
exciting. Great.
Cool. So thank you for listening, and please check us out on iTunes. Leave us that review, as we mentioned. You can follow us on Twitter. Catherine, where can they shoot you some prison slang?
They can shoot me some prison slang at CS McMullen on Twitter.
And Charles, where can they ask parole questions?
I'm watching you try to be creative. I'm like, Dan, no,
Seamless.
this isn't your strong suit. They can tweet me parole questions at Charles Bryce.
And if you just want to bag on me for my terrible performance in the quiz, you can tweet at me at NFGDan, and you can follow the podcast at Game Club Cast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time with some of the boy in Bastion.
See y'all then. Bye.